Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video where we're talking about order flow. You can hear the crowd cheering in the background. One of the very popular things I hear in the comments is, Corbs, do more about order flow. Corbs, you don't talk much about order flow. And be it far from me to not give the people what they want. Today, we're gonna be talking about order flow. Now, in this video, I'm gonna be showing you a specific trade that surfaced on the order flow. It wasn't pre-planned. This wasn't something as a trade idea that I was planning on seeing. It just surfaced. And when it did, I was able to jump on board and take a little bit out of it. On the first initial part of this trade, I made about $500. So it wasn't like a crushing type of a trade. It didn't really go that far, but it was something very specific that happened. I don't talk that much about order flow, and I think for one of the reasons is I almost feel like I don't have that much to say about it. When it comes to the information that we get through really any type of order flow, I find that it can be extremely noisy. And it can be extremely overwhelming, and it can put you in a position of getting very distracted, very caught in the noise. If you're not careful, really over trading. If you're looking at the order flow and you don't really know what you're doing with it, everything looks like a signal and everything can be a reason to enter. And it can lead to a lot of frustrations, and it can be dangerous. And so when I'm using the order flow, it's in a very specific way. Primarily, I'm using it to refine my entries and to help manage my positions better. But there are also a couple things that I will enter on just directly on order flow. Usually it's a very specific type of a setup. It usually happens in a very specific situation. Outside of that, I'm not really focused on it, and I don't do too much with it. Maybe in the realm of all the possibilities with order flow, potentially I'm only scratching the surface with it, but it serves its purpose. It's incredibly valuable to me, but I do use it in a very specific way. In this video, I think, like I said, I just want to walk you through what we saw surface here, because it was really cool to see. I feel like I was out in the wilderness, out in nature, and I saw a very rare bird. Snapped a photo of it, and I brought it back to my bird friends who would be interested in this kind of a thing. Mostly everybody in my life would not care in the slightest what happened here. As a trader, it was kind of cool to see, because what we're going to be looking at, spoiler, is an iceberg order. I cannot remember the last time I just saw one so clean. Typically, larger banks and people with big orders, they have become very sophisticated on how they enter these things, and normally they're not very visible. But this was just blatant, and it was visible, and it was kind of cool to see it. I think you guys would appreciate it as well, and I think that this would be a beneficial thing to understand if you don't. So in this video, I'll walk through what an iceberg order is, in case you're unaware. And then I just want to jump into the chart and see exactly how this happened and show you when it happened, what I did with it. That way you can go back, you can re-look over this yourself and start becoming familiar with identifying icebergs yourself and this kind of small portion of order flow. Okay, that's long enough of an intro. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so we're gonna jump into the charts. Let me start off by just explaining what an iceberg order is, because that's what we're gonna be looking at. An iceberg order is something specific that happens on the order flow. I'll explain it, and then when we jump into the charts and you see it, it'll probably make a lot more sense. But let me just get it out there first if you don't know. An iceberg order is when there's a lot of contracts that need to be traded, a lot of, anything. There's a lot of business that needs to be done. But instead of a large player that might have thousands of, let's say, contracts that they're trying to trade, instead of just dumping them all or just showing their hand and flooding the market with these orders, they'll put out a certain amount. As those get traded, they'll keep adding to it. So it's called an iceberg order because we can see these orders that are waiting to be traded. And as they get traded, we're only actually seeing the tip of the iceberg. Under the surface, there's a whole lot more to what's going on. So we might see a few hundred orders that are looking to get traded, but there might be thousands that are trying to get traded. So as those several hundred get traded, more and more just keep getting added. And that's how we can identify iceberg orders. These levels of liquidity in the orders, in the order flow that get traded and then that just keep getting refilled. So with that in mind, let me jump in. Let's pull up the chart here and we'll take a look at this. And once you see it, you'll better understand what I'm talking about, okay? There's only two charts we need to be looking at right now. In the top left-hand corner here, where I'm trying to draw attention to, we'll reference this just to kind of see how I interacted with it. And then in the bottom right-hand corner here, this will be the order flow tool that I'm using And this will be where we're really looking at what shaped up and how this surfaced, okay? So these other charts you're looking at are not going to be displaying this because this isn't today's action. The time I'm recording this video, this isn't today, or it wasn't even yesterday, I believe. But when this happened, or so these other charts, you can kind of pretend like they're not here because they'll be, the current day. When this surfaced, so you can go back and look at this yourself if you'd like. This was March 23rd. It's a Tuesday at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, so 2021, depending on when you're watching this video. But so you can go back, you can pull this up yourself, you can see how this played out and see the tools that you're using if you are able to identify this as well. And let's jump in and let's take a look at it. What ended up happening is we had this large level of liquidity right here. And you can see it says 411. This is just telling us that there's 411 orders that are primed up and just sitting there waiting to get filled. And you can see it's red because there's a significant more here than at every other level. Most of these levels are kind of like low 200s, under 200. And then here we have 411. So anytime I see that type of liquidity, I'm always interested and want to see what happens when we get there. But this is part of the information in order flow that can just be very confusing. And if you're not careful, a lot of people, they learn about liquidity or they start to identify these things, and then they just run around, and every time there's a lot of orders resting there, they try to jump in front of them or try to think that that's going to be a support level or resistance level, depending on which way we're moving. And this by no means is a reason for me to enter. This is not a trade idea. But what happens next, and once I realized it was an iceberg order, that's when it became a trade idea. Now, at this time, in real time as this was shaping up, I could see all these orders here, but I had no idea that this was an iceberg. I didn't know that there was going to be more coming yet. So this is what happens. Now, here, this 39.1925, that's the current price as we're looking at it. And then you can see here, if you follow my crosshair over, 39.1875, that's where all this liquidity is. All right, so let's just kind of scroll ahead here and see how this reacts as price gets down and trades into that level. Okay, so as we come down and trade into this level, you can see these red dots that are showing up. These are just large orders that are being triggered off, okay? So trading is happening at every single level, but at certain times, larger orders step in, and those are getting tracked. So we push into this liquidity here. We push into all these orders, and a lot of orders get traded. Big orders, boom, boom, boom. So we backing this up, we had 400 plus orders here waiting to get filled. When we traded down into that, we traded a lot more than 400, but we just started hammering through those big orders going off. And then what happened is instead of executing this, and this is normally what we see, when we're heading in a direction, we clear out all the orders, we keep going. So if we're dropping down, we have to trade through every order that's there before we can go to the next level, before we can go to the next price. If we don't clear out all the orders, we can't continue. And so what happens here is instead of just these big orders coming in, clearing everything out and us continuing lower, we trade through all of this. A lot happens here. And then as price, what happens next is this gets reloaded. It gets refilled. This 1875 level, instead of giving out and breaking, we hold, trade a ton, and it gets refilled. Now all of a sudden we're back. Another 300 orders are waiting to get traded here. And this is when I realized that it was an iceberg happening. All this liquidity, we traded a ton of it, and then it just got reloaded, the same level. And so what I was seeing here, and what we can take from this, is there was a lot more that actually wanted to get traded at this level. And so as it was getting filled, more just kept dumping on. So when I saw this happen and I realized that it was that this was an iceberg order and there was a lot going on here, I was looking at this at being a support level, and it also lined up very nicely with an initial balance low of this day. So that's something to keep in mind. Well, this actually wasn't a standalone thing. It happened right at the initial balance low. So when I saw this happen, I jumped on board because what I was going to do is if that gives out the 1875, I'm done. I want to be out of this trade. But if that level is going to hold, I'm going to treat it as support and take it up. So what I ended up doing, 1875 is the order. As soon as I saw this, all those orders get cleared out and just get reloaded, I jumped on board. What we can see here, this is the trade that I took. This green check or mark is how Sierra marks off longs. So this green mark is where I entered, and then these lighter green marks are where I took profit. And so what happened is I entered in here at the 1975. So this happened, I realized it was an iceberg. I jumped onto it as it was moving up. So I got in, 4 ticks above the actual level, just a point above it. And then as it started moving higher, I scaled out and then took the rest off as we were holding. You can't see this now, but the 39.25 I had as an LVN. It's since been filled in, so it's not there currently. But at the time, I had an LVN there that I was watching, and that would have been a very good spot for us to hit resistance. And then that's what ended up happening. We hit resistance there. Okay, so coming in, treating this as support down below us, and then taking it up just to the next level of resistance. It didn't go very far, and I didn't crush on this trade. But this was something that I wasn't planning on taking. It just surfaced, and I jumped on board with it, okay? So there was a couple more things that happened with this trade later on and even at that specific level. But the main thing I just wanted to showcase is what happened right here. When we cleared out those orders, could not break it, and then just reloaded at that same exact spot. This would be a nice thing to go back for yourselves and to check out, and this is a good example of kind of a rare thing that happens, at least rare to identify it. I think we have some sophisticated tools nowadays that help us identify when there is orders being split up and when icebergs are happening, because normally they're pretty well hidden. I cannot remember the last time I've seen something, I've seen it happen like this, where it was just like, whoa, that is very, very obvious. So it was kind of cool to see, and I really wanted to kind of bring that out in this video. And then also, if we're talking about like a textbook example of something, it's a nice example to draw out just for something we can learn from. If you're new to order flow and maybe you don't exactly know what an iceberg order is, it's a very simple idea. Not that simple to find or to trade off of, but in this example, it was pretty simple, okay? Now, with that being said, I think that this is not a trade recommendation. This is not a trade that I would recommend looking for and trying to take on, but this would definitely be something to be aware of. If you're in order flow, using order flow, trying to learn about order flow, icebergs are just a very common thing that you need to know about. This was a pretty good example that you can go back and refer to and that you can check in on yourself. So that'll probably be it for this video. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Probably nothing else to really drag on about this, but it was a specific order flow entry that just surfaced for me. I wanted to draw it out to kind of showcase how it shaped up, which I thought was pretty cool, pretty rare. I think in the future I'll be trying to do some more videos around order flow, maybe other videos specifically that would be a little bit more informative. This one was more of just kind of a walkthrough to showcase something specific. But we'll go ahead and wrap up for this one. You can let me know what you guys thought about the video. I always enjoy you doing that in the comments, and I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon, and I'll see you in the next video.